sides of the park, if you will, there's access points and there's crosswalks. But in one of the photos that I've sent, it's on page 2 of 6. You can see this is a photo taken from the west side. There's no way to get across that street. And as I said, the buses travel very quickly in both directions. And there's also lots of cars on Springmont Drive. It's kind of the way you get from Steveston Village up to Williams. And so my daughter, if you look at page, she has no way to get back and forth to the park. And of course, it's not just my daughter, although that's what sparked it. We bought this house on Springmont Drive in the summer, and I realized that there's really no way to get there. And of course, there's students that cross the street, there's elderly people, and there's really no way to get across. And of course, that's an entry point to the park, so that's a natural crossing point. I should also add that I've written, I opened a case, if you will. I don't know, this is kind of my second channel of effort to do this. Last year, around October, I wrote an email and I opened a case with traffic operations for the city of Richmond, and they denied my request to put this crosswalk because they said it didn't merit enough traffic. And then I even volunteered to the traffic operations. I said, I will finance the crosswalk. I'll pay for the painting and I'll pay for the sign. We just have no way to get across the street. And they said, it's not about money. It's just we're not going to put a crosswalk there. I don't know if traffic operations is the same as this committee that I'm speaking to. I've never done this before, but I'm just trying every effort possible that I can to try and get a crosswalk so we can safely get across the street. And I will say this, the problem becomes more compounded in the winter months when it gets darker a little bit earlier. At 4 o'clock at night, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if you're on the east side and my children are trying to come home, or anybody, the buses come very quickly around the curve. You're really taking a big risk. And if you have slower people who are elderly people, you're taking a risk because buses or vehicles cannot see you so clearly. So I think if there was a crosswalk there, and if you look, for example, at the photo that I submitted on page 6, there's a good example of a crosswalk. That's on the east side of Manoa Steeves Park. So I don't know if it's a financing issue or the resources or what have you, but as I said, I'm willing to raise the funds to do it if necessary, and I don't know what the right channel is. I'm just trying to get a safe way for my kids, the other kids who live on our block, and elderly people to get back and forth into the park.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I think you bring up a very important issue, which is community safety. I think we are concerned about that too. Now, I see that Councillor McPhail has a question.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Schwartz. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz, for your presentation, and thanks for your perseverance and bringing it through to committee. Do your children go to Manoa Steeves? It's just a question.
Yeah, first of all, it's my pleasure, and thank you for giving me the time to present. I appreciate it. My children don't go to Manoa Steeves, but one of the reasons why we bought this home on Springmont, obviously, is there's a very big park there. So they do not attend the school, but they cross back and forth almost daily.
No, it's just that quite often with children going to, your children wouldn't have been the only children, and quite often the school administration would work with the Richmond District Parents Association, and there's also a traffic safety advisory committee that is made up of representatives from the school district and city staff. So I just wondered if you had tried that route. So no, that's fine. And so, Mr. Chair, I'm sure you'll be asking transportation staff about the inquiry and what it takes to, request a crosswalk. Thank you.
So any further questions to Mr. Schwartz? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. Now, I would like to suggest that we refer this to staff for follow-up action. Any staff member can respond to that. Is it appropriate that we send this to you for any further action?
Mr. Chair, absolutely. You're, of course, you're welcome to forward this to staff for review and potential action.
Okay, good. Councillor Liu, you have a question?
Thanks. Just a comment. I think, you and I both sit on the school board liaison committee, and the traffic committee reports to that. And so I think bringing this forward to them, that this specific issue, because it is at a school,
Yes.
would be useful to just make sure that the link of the communication trail is there, so that we don't also have the parent advisory committee trying to do the same thing, so that everybody's on the same page, that we're moving forward to make that area safer for kids to get to school.
Oh, that's a good suggestion. Councillor Wu?
Yeah, thank you, the chair. Just a comment. So over the last year, I saw the success of putting in a crosswalk out in Hamilton, which on either side of the road, I think it was Fraserwood Drive or something like that. It was part of a trail network where the pictures, thankfully, that Mr. Schwartz provided, you can see on that last page, there's the sidewalk dips down on both ends, so it's obviously a connecting point. But I'm seeing on the pictures, the other pictures, on the main area where he's looking for a crosswalk. Now it looks like, I can't exactly tell, but it looks like that's someone's driveway, perhaps directly across. So I'm not sure if that's a concern or not. Or there's utility work there at the other end, so I'm not sure if that's an issue or why Mr. Schwartz would have been told what he was told at the previous time. But for me, this looks like a great situation where we can put the next level of traffic safety infrastructure in, be it signage, be it painted stripes, or and as we've seen, the next level even goes to lights and traffic calming humps. So I think this was a good candidate for the start of that.
Yes, okay, good. So may I suggest that we have a referral motion first to School Council Liaison Committee, and second to staff for any follow-up action.
So moved.
Move.
Second.
Okay, so any further discussion? So I call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carry. So, Mr. Schwartz, thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll be follow up. So, as you can see, we are going to refer this to the school board liaison committee with the city, and also staff will take up the issue. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for hearing it. I was just going to ask one thing. Would it be of any use if I forwarded the emails that I received from operations, or not necessary?
Well, you can do that, but I think it's not absolutely necessary. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll follow up on
Thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving forward, we go to item number 1, TransLink 2019 Transit Network Review, consultation results. So, Donna, anything to add to the report or any highlights you want to mention?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Since the writing of the report, staff was informed at the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee meeting that the investment plan will be delayed until likely 2022. So this delay to the implementation plan will affect the proposed changes identified in this report.
Yes, okay, thank you. So any questions? Councillor Liu?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, thank you for this. I'm wondering if there's going to be a delay till 2022. A number of people, lots of people were involved in the consultation process, and so I think their expectation is something's going to happen. Is there some sort of mechanism to let them know that there's a delay for an extra year on this program?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, if you have names of people, we could let them know. It is on TransLink's website in any updates. We heard the delay through the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. I believe they will be informing the Mayor's Council at some point soon. So we were just informed last week.
So maybe this is something we want to push out on Richmond social media to thank people for their involvement in this, and then that it's going to be delayed somehow, or redirect them back to TransLink or something?
We can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you. So Councillor McPhail?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. Well, thank you for the report, and that was my question also. One of my questions about the 10-year investment plan, so that's a bit disappointing, although I guess given the circumstances, understandable. I know there was a lot of hope put into the Southwest Area Transportation Plan and the process that, many of us took part in. And I guess my question to you, has there been any word on the bus loop on Chatham? It's probably not a part of this. I know all the route changes were all areas that we had heard about from the community that needed attention. So, so I'll stop there on the report. But any update on the bus loop?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, we will be providing a memo to Council in the next month on the current status.
All right. Looking forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Okay. I have a question about Route 408 from Ironwood to Richmond Centre. Now, I noticed that in the report, staff mentioned that because there's a split in the support and the opposition of the change, and the last sentence reads, TransLink will not proceed with the proposal. So what does that mean? Because there's a split of opinion, but I don't want them just to drop it, and not to do anything about it. Perhaps, they should go back to the consultation to come up with other kinds of proposal. So what does that mean when they say they're not going to work further with the proposal?
Mr. Chair, I believe TransLink, as they proposed it, it will not proceed. We can bring any comments you may have back to TransLink for further discussion.
Good. Yes, because I'm sure that they should look further into the issue, right? Because it's not black and white, but it's definitely an issue. Half of the people support it, so I think there's a demand or at least some need for it. So I hope that staff can also bring it back to them, saying that yes, there's a split of opinion, but we hope that they don't just drop it as it is, and then not to come up with any other kinds of ideas. Okay. So any further questions? If not, can I have a motion for the staff recommendation? Move second. So call a question. Those in favor, opposed, motion carried. So item number 2, liquid waste management plan. So Mr. Ho, anything you want to add to the report or any highlight you want to mention?
Mr. Chair, nothing to add to the report.
Any questions? Councillor Wu?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, I went through this one with a fine-tooth comb, so I have a number of questions. So I apologize. First off, I think I've got it correct. The report there's a duplication in it. So page 19 to 49 is the exact same as 50 to 80. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that's correct. That is a duplication. My apologies.
Okay, great. Okay, I was trying to see if I missed something in there, but okay. The first item, and I guess, relates to odor and air emissions. So this starts on our page 21. It's that submission checklist, and there's a bunch of narratives on that page. And narrative number 12 talks about odor control, and then the next two are about air emissions. But I'm mainly concerned about the odor control. So further on in the report, that's on page 82, that's the map, that's what's it called, attachment 4, the City of Richmond odor facilities at sanitary pump stations as of January of this year. So what I note on there is that it's really hard to read, but if you have a paper copy. But anyway, there's odor complaints, that's the red spots. And then there's, so what was I looking for here? Where was I looking for here? The odor control facilities. So where, I can't really tell which is the facility, the odor control facility of those in the legend. There's pump station, treatment, sewer pump station, And I'm just curious, is there one of these odor control facilities in the Hamilton area? Because I've heard from many residents, and I've detected a strong sense of kind of sewage at different places at different times. So do we do odor control out in Hamilton? I guess that's my first question.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, this map is only identifying city facilities. Likely any odor control facilities would be owned and operated by Metro Vancouver.
Do we know, through the chair and staff, do we know if Metro Vancouver has any?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I believe they do have one in Hamilton, but we can double check on that.
Yeah, please do. I have a meeting with the Hamilton Community Association tonight, and if you could get back to me before 7:30, then I can share that with them, because we often have that as a discussion item. Okay, thank you. Next one on that vein, so kind of going back to page 25 now. This is the list of attachments. And then I noticed at the bottom of page 25, attachment 11 and attachment 12 were not checked. So my question is, why were those not checked and included? So for attachment, let's see, 11, that's the kind of water data samples. And then I was trying to figure out what would that be involving. So I think I've then moved to page 46, and it talks about there, attachment number 11. It says the 2020 results will be available in February 2021. So we're past that. Are those results available? They weren't included in this report. If they are available, could we get a copy of them?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, certainly. We'll take a look at that and find out where it's at.
Oh, okay, thanks. Thank you. Then through the chair to staff, the other attachment there, attachment number 12 from page 25, and then that takes us over to page 47, where it breaks it into a bit more detail there. So it says on page 47 under attachment 12 that there's no changes to riparian areas and stream classification. So I'm just curious, I have two examples that are come to mind, and I would think that they're considered changes, but maybe staff can clarify for me. So the first one is in Hamilton, is at Gilly Road and Westminster Highway, where they were replacing the box culvert, and there's a canal that runs directly north to the river. So does that type of work, box culvert and putting new culverts in along the existing canal, does that not consider a change or not? And then the second thought was the 7 Road Canal over by Eco Waste that drains south into the south arm of the river. I was actually there last weekend and took a photo of this huge amount of water that was spilling out over the dike during some temporary work. I would think, does that work not involve riparian area changes?
To the chair, if I may, I'd like to defer that question to Mr. Chad Pollan, the Manager of Environment, to provide more clarity on RMAs.
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Council Wolf, the changes in the report, as stated in the riparian areas, would be a change, but as it's classified under the Metro Vancouver classification, it wouldn't be a change to the riparian status itself.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's kind of the clarification I was hoping for. Next, on that same thread there, under riparian areas, because I don't know where else this would fit, but it mentions it here. Sorry, just lost track of another page here. Hold on, I'll find it in a second. I lost it. So many books. Anyway, in our Richmond Ecological Network Management Strategy, the document came out in 2015, and it talks about our riparian areas not having bylaws, and that being something that we would need. So in the document there, it talks about riparian management areas there's currently no support for them through bylaws or development permits. And then, like, if we're doing all these repairs or changes to them, or trying to utilize them for liquid waste drainage, can I get some clarification? Do we have bylaws for them? Because I was looking under our bylaws, and in 2018, which is after this network strategy came out, I found bylaw 9871. So is that our bylaw that supports riparian areas? Sorry, it's a little bit of a...
Yeah, Councillor Wolf, the document item that you're reading there is out of date. It's a 2015 document. At that time, we didn't have a specific regulatory trigger. We currently have the watercourse crossing bylaw right now that we enforce for those types of works, and we would engage with Metro Vancouver, much like any other developer or the province in that matter, such that they would be working in our riparian areas.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Two short final questions through the chair to staff. This one, a bit maybe technical for someone. Maybe you'll get followed up information. But on page 41, this is under the narrative 18, which is to summarize the estimate of our greenhouse gas emissions that relate to municipal regional liquid waste management. So it has there, the quote is 150.5 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. That's the number there on page 41. But can either staff comment right now? Is that a trend going up? Is that trend going down? If you're not able to answer it right now, could you direct me to a graph or map that shows that data?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that number has gone down slightly, progressively over the past iterations. And that's due to the city and staff continuously looking at ways to improve the efficiency of our systems, as well as our operations. One of them being just simply changing our vehicles to renewable energy vehicles.
Okay, so more of the savings then has come through the fuel use as opposed to the electricity, because I would think the electricity would be going up as we're having more of these facilities and less gravity fed. But you're saying the fuel savings is where a lot of that's coming. Okay, thank you. And my final question should also be a fairly easy one through chair to staff. This is on the last page of this report, I think, page 86. So it's going back to those maps or something like that. 86, where is it? There it is. So 86 is a big blank map of Richmond, and it says on there that the implementation phase is not ended yet. Do we have an idea when we will have some integrated storm water management plan to put on here?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we have developed our what we call IRMS, which stands for Integrated Rainwater Resource Management Strategy. So through that's an ongoing initiative where we continually look for areas to implement those initiatives. So some of the examples that we've done so far include Garden City Lands and Garden City Park, where we have storage ponds and wetlands and swale networks to detain stormwater during heavy rainfall events. Other things include like rain barrel programs and things like that. So it is an ongoing implementation initiative.
Okay, great. And I think that's all of my questions at this time. Thank you very much, staff, and through the chair.
Okay. Now, may I suggest that perhaps staff can provide a memo to us on some of the questions that being raised by Councillor Wu, some questions that you haven't answered, or something more you want to talk about those questions. So can staff do that, supply us with a memo?
Mr. Chair, we certainly can do that.
Okay, thank you. Linda McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions, just a couple of comments. And, as I read the report, I find it to be a very positive report, and I want to thank staff for that. I mean, when you read that, in inflow and infiltration and asset management, that we're ahead of, Metro Vancouver's target dates. That's really good to hear. And the success we've had with our water metering, this really goes to show that the policies and strategies that we have in place are working and that the community is benefiting from it. So thank you to staff for all the work that you do, because while we set direction, it's you who are on the ground doing the work. So thanks so much.
Good. So any further questions? If not, may I have a motion for the staff recommendation? So moved, seconded. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Item number 3, Lower Mainland Flood Management Strategy Update. So Mr. Ho is going to speak today?
That's correct, and I have nothing further to add, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so anything to add or any comments? Councillor Wolf?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, just one question here. So we discussed some things related to land raising and Councillor Steves talked about salt wedge issue being more of an issue in the south arm. So my question here related to our flood management strategy. So many of us might be familiar with the work that's just happened at the south end of Gilbert along the South Dike. One of the strategies around flood management, or let's say the saltwater wedge coming in, was the ability to have the inland dike, or the inland water level to be higher, so that it prevents the water from coming in. Does our new South Dike, does it function in that way? Does it allow for the city to raise the water on the inland side of the road so that can keep the salt water from coming in? If that makes sense? I'm showing a picture.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the dike raising itself doesn't really affect the salt wedge too much. It's really more the groundwater level on the inside of the dike that would be doing that. So, to directly answer the question, the dike raising itself would not be doing anything to mitigate the effects of the salt wedge inland.
Okay, then through the chair to staff, just to follow up on that, just so I can finish making my sense of this here. So the water ditch that is on the inside, that's water that the city has brought in from the river, and if we bring it in and it's salty, then that's going to go into the groundwater. Whereas if we were holding rainwater or something, and then we didn't need to bring in salt water, I'm trying to figure out where is the solution here? If it is going to be in the future saltier and higher water level to the south, how will our dike operations, before we approve it on the north arm as well, do we have the right model for going forward to deal with without needing to raise the land of all the agricultural crops? So I'm not sure if I got the question clear. I probably don't, because I'm putting things together from last night and what I see it read into this report.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we have salt monitors on some of the pump stations. So if we detect the saltwater wedge, we don't bring in water for irrigation purposes. As time goes by, we'll continue monitoring that. Most of the water that is inside is fresh water. A lot of it is rainfall. And as I said, we monitor the salt levels, and when irrigation water is needed, we will bring that water in through the pump stations. In the very long term, the intent of raising the land is so that the groundwater level will raise accordingly as well, so then the salt water will not be pushing into the groundwater inside the island. I see Mr. Irving has his camera on now. Would you like to add something?
Yeah, thanks. And just to add to that, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Wolf, certainly that south area of the ALR around Sitaway number 6 Road is a challenging area. We do have the council adopted East Richmond drainage study and capital program that has been worked on and implemented over the last 10 years, really. So we've done a lot of work to try and improve and optimize the system in that area to do exactly as Mr. Chan indicates, to maximize our ability to bring in river water from the south arm, which is challenging at times because when the salt ledge does come out, we do have to shut that down. We have the salt meter. If the salinity is too high, we can't bring that water in. That will harm crops. But it is a very challenging area because it is one of the lowest areas on the island. And the system that we have, the ditches, canals, and pump stations, it fulfills two functions. It provides all the drainage to remove excess water in the rainy season, and then, of course, provides the ability for us to bring river water in. And when those properties are really low relative to the river level and to our pump stations, it's very challenging to meet both those objectives. If we simply could use a system to bring in irrigation water, that would be much simpler. But when that same system has to reverse the flow and give us hydraulic grade to get it out, it gets very challenging to do that without flooding the properties. And certainly this last winter, you saw with some of the heavy rainfall we had through December and January, a lot of properties along Sidaway and there were fully flooded for an extended period of time. The system is just not capable of removing that water because the properties are just simply too low. So ultimately, you can go to a very hard engineered solution where you're building a chain of additional pump stations, which becomes very expensive and mechanical, but really you're just fighting the long-term issue of the river, the ocean levels getting higher, and the land that you're trying to service slowly sinking. It does slowly sink over time, about 3 millimeters a year. So that's where we're kind of trying to address a strategy that, over the very long term, you want to try and keep those properties rising as they would naturally with the deposition of the river to maintain their viability.
And I appreciate that. Thank you for clarifying both staff. Just a quick follow-up that came to mind there. Do we actually have any inland pump stations, or are they just along the river?
Yes, yes. There are a couple of inland pump stations, mostly along Stevenson Highway area.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Councilor McPhail?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through the staff. Well, thank you for the report. Can you remind me, are there elected officials that attend the Fraser Basin Council?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, there were elected officials that attended the flood forum that was held by the Fraser Basin Council last October, yes.
But we don't have a representative to that forum, to that council.
It was a bit of a mixed bag, so depending on who the municipality had to represent, most of it was at the staff level, at various staff levels of staffing. But there were some elected officials, typically from the smaller communities.
Right. Well, thank you for the report, and I think that, I really agree with your conclusion and that we need to keep going on the path that we're on, and I'm sure that a lot of it is financial for some of these other communities. I'm sure we've all had opportunities to speak with counselors in some of the other communities upriver, and of course they're nowhere near to what, to the work that we've done and the success that we've had in accessing funding from different levels of government. So I agree with your conclusion, and I think that it's correct that we keep on the path we're going, and that you're going to write the Fraser Basin Council and share those comments. So thank you.
Okay. Well, actually, to follow up with the last comment made by Councillor McPhail, I want to ask staff for some comments. Now, I noticed that the staff is only asking us to accept this report for information. However, when I read the report, I think this is not satisfactory in the sense that this flooding problem affects Richmond most, if anything happens. However, we are not being included in the leadership committee of the Fraser Basin Council, and we do not seem to have our voice on the table, and I don't think this should be going on. So I want staff to comment on how can we keep up with the lobbying. Can we work with or can we try to solicit some support from other cities that Richmond should have a more prominent role in this? Shall we lobby provincial government that Richmond should be given a more prominent role in the flood management strategy. So staff, anybody can comment on that?
Mr. Chair, yes, thank you. I certainly echo those comments. Through the course of Fraser Basin Council's execution of this regional flood management strategy, we certainly recognize that their efforts have value to a number of communities. But as we've identified to Council previously, where we're at with our flood protection management strategy and the master plan is beyond decades ahead of what the Fraser Basin Council is trying to achieve. And it's not to say that their efforts are wasted. Certainly that's a required effort for a number of communities that aren't as far ahead as us. But certainly, by way of example, with regards to the issue of land raising in the ALR, and these issues are very complex and they're very appropriately dealt with at the local level by local elected municipal councils as there's a host of land use impacts, and we really don't see any value to an external regional body trying to weigh in on that issue. So similar to Council's previous resolutions on this issue and the communication that we have done, the lobbying we've done with all those entities, the local governments, the regional government, and the province, it would certainly be appropriate for us to establish those efforts. And certainly with committee direction and council direction, we could come back with explicit recommendations on how we go about that and maybe focus efforts specifically at the provincial level, who will ultimately control the levers with regards to the establishment of any authority in this area.
So if we want to speak to the provincial government, which ministry would be the appropriate ministry that we should approach and talk to?
Mr. Chair, there would be a few overlapping ministries as the Ministry of Environment to begin with, but we would certainly be looking at probably potentially even cabinet for this type of decision if there was a provincial consideration of establishing additional powers for a regional entity, whether that's something like Metro Vancouver or broadening that Fraser Basin Council has. So we would have to explore that and strategize, but with a referral, we could certainly bring something back to the committee and provide some options and recommendations.
Yes, that would be great. So in that case, I would suggest that we have two recommendations. One is to receive the report for information, and secondly, we direct staff to come up with a plan or strategy to raise the concerns we have about this flood control strategy to the appropriate level of government. So can staff come up with some kind of suggestions?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the motion would be to adopt this for information and also refers to staff for further advice on how to proceed with more advocacy with the provincial government. Okay. Oh, Linda? Oh.
I'll move that. Yeah.
Okay, so move. Second. Okay, any further comments? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Now, managers report, but before going to the managers, perhaps I would have Michael, 4A.
Great, thank you. This will probably be fairly brief. So the item I've called invasive species, it relates to a number of emails and information I've got back and forth from staff. So what residents have seen, and I can confirm, is a lot of the invasive species removal in the city is being done with brush mowers, so really large machinery and angling so that it's not hitting the rocks and damaging, digging up soil and stuff. So it's done with quite a fine skill, but it's not connecting to the biology of the plants. So blackberry, it's really happy actually if you just mow it right down and let it start again the next year. Its root systems come right back.
And so, to me, what I'm looking for here is a plan for us to actually remove invasive species by the root, and to not just do the brush mower technique in all situations, because it also often brushes down the other plants that would have had a chance to actually come up and shade out and get a running start ahead of the next batch of blackberry and invasive species. So, and I know that the provincial government has just announced big millions of dollars of funding. They're going to hire 200 people around the province to work on invasive species. But I'd like to try and get some cooperation with our fee-for-service partner, the Lower Mainland Green Team, or maybe other groups or other ways that we can actually get people involved with removing invasive species, and be it staff or be it contracted out or volunteer groups. I did get a response from staff that it's kind of a risky thing to get youth involved with invasive species, the cuts and stuff. That's why the Lower Mainland Green Team has worked really well with other municipalities, as they show people the ways to do it. They give them the gloves and the tools, and they get the job done in a more of a permanent way, and then follow it up with the planting events. Instead of us just having planting events in a few areas where it's already nice and easy to work, we have to get the hands in the invasive species area first. So maybe a comment from staff where we're at for that, and where you think we could go beyond the Lower Mainland Green Team. Is there any other solutions? Do we need to direct staff to assign some public work staff to actually spend time with a shovel and removing some root balls from some of the riparian areas or some of the environmental sensitive areas? What can staff comment on that?
Mr. Chair, to Councillor Wolf, we do have established council-approved budgets and service levels for response on invasive species. And certainly within those, we attempt to be most effective and efficient as we can be. Certainly as we're doing things like ditch clearing and using mechanized equipment to do removals, absolutely it's not always effective for certain species at certain times. It is of course, an efficient way to approach and spend our dollars broadly, not just to meet invasive species management objectives, but to generally meet our drainage objectives and other things like that. But certainly with council direction, we could look at those service levels and budgets and bring forward options on any expanded program if that was what was the wish of council.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Through the chair staff, I also heard from some examples I'd asked where was this done recently in Richmond. And Gary Point Park and McDonald Beach were listed as areas where Scotch broom was removed. I haven't gone to check those two sites out where exactly the Scotch broom was removed, but I've spent many hours working with volunteer groups to remove Scotch broom with really large, they call them weed wrenches. They're about 6 feet long, solid metal, and you have to wrench the thing out of the ground. So if we were just cutting them down, they're going to come right back, and they actually make the soil a bit toxic, so only more Scotch broom goes back. So you really got to get the plant material out of the ground. So I'm not sure if we actually did get it out of the ground there. I'm not sure if anyone on staff can comment over those just brush mowed or clipped right at the base.
The Chair, Council Wolf, that was a parks program in Gary Point Park. It's my understanding it was ongoing for approximately 4 years. And it did include a different brush mowing, but it did also include at some level of stage the removal of the roots as per the best management practices. Again, that was a parks program that was initiated there.
Oh, okay. So then I'll work the angle on this through parks as well. So I'll leave it to this this committee with the budgets and the already pre-approved methods. But I've just heard a lot of this from residents who are concerned that it's a bit of a waste of money when we're just brushing it down to have it come right back thicker the next year. without the disrupting the life cycle more than just cutting the above ground parts. So anyhow, yeah, keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll get some support from the government's, provincial government's funding and staff increases. So thank you.
Yeah, but to follow up on that, I want to ask staff, do we have a plan, a management plan of invasive species?
To you, Mr. Chair, we have the Invasive Species Action Plan that was in council endorsed in 2016 that implements our strategies and guidance in the field as to the priority species we manage in the community. The priority species that we have in place, typically the knotweed, wild chervil, blackberry to an extent, there's a lot of challenges with trying to manage those species under the best management practices at the scale at which they do present themselves in some instances, specifically along the dike, in and around water, so working with water. So we do look to our involvement at the provincial level with the Invasive Species Council of BC, as well as implementing some of our own best management practices for managing species throughout the city of Richmond.
And how often do we have reports or updates, about the implementation of the plan back to council or to committee? How often do we get that kind of update?
So, Mr. Chair, the last update for the Invasive Species Council was in 2018, I believe. It's supposed to be on a 2-year cycle, so we are due to have an update coming sometime shortly on the progress we make with the Invasive Species Action Plan.
Okay, great. So we would have some more information later.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Good. Very good. Okay, moving on. Managers. Linda.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just had a question with regards to the invasive species. I know in past years, and I think it was around Earth Day, there were volunteer groups that were out in parks, and they were actually digging. I was out at a couple of them. And I guess with, the situation we're in, we can't ask volunteers to go out and do that. So I'm just wondering, do you know if volunteer groups in a normal year are still doing that? And who are those groups? And are we applying to the province for some of that funding?
Up to the Chair, to Councilor McPhail. The funding was assessed. We staff were anticipating the funding to come our way. I believe the $12 million available, $1 million is allocated or earmarked for specific provincial projects. Of the $3 million is a part of the annual funding that the city also already gets, which is a $10,000 fund. And the remaining $8 million was dedicated to staffing provincial levels for resources. So we are hoping that when the province has more resources, we can take advantage of some of those partnerships or plans in the field. As for the people or the groups, we have approached in the past the green groups in and around the city. We haven't had much success with finding organized groups, to be honest. And certainly with the COVID response of the last year, we've had significant challenges in place. But there are some initiatives we're looking at in place, specifically at the Bass Slough, which is a council-endorsed program, where hopefully if things resume back to the way they were, we can participate in more community activation as well as participation in the future, certainly.
That's great. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you to Councilor McPhail, I'll also just add to that, part of the approved council program obviously is the capital program. And as we look at that and certainly expand our works on improving flood protection in the dikes, a big part of that is environmental remediation, which involves addressing invasive species as well. So I think over time, certainly through that capital program and the flood protection works, we'll be able to make a significant dent in the invasive species problem, certainly as it relates to those riparian areas and environmental areas adjacent to the diking system.
Good, thank you. So, managers' reports.
Yes, we have Eric Spillane. He's just going to provide you an update on River Parkway.
To the Chair, I'm going to provide you an update on the opening of the new River Parkway. So River Parkway between Gilbert Road and Cambie Road was open to the public on the afternoon of March 6th. The new parkway includes a 2-lane road with bike lanes on each side and are protected with delineators for enhanced safety. There's also new traffic signals and crosswalks at Leslie Road and Cambie Road, and paved pedestrian walkways and LED lights are also included. Access to River Road from Gilbert Road is now permanently closed, and some of the remaining works include construction of the cul-de-sac at the southwest dead end of River Road, and it also includes addition of traffic control devices to address some illegal turns at Cedar Bridge Way, and we'll also be doing some traffic signal optimization at 3 Road and Campy.
Okay, any questions? No, okay, thank you. And next report.
Additionally, Mr. Chair, we have Peter Russell who's going to provide an update on the Metro Vancouver biogas system at the Little Island Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Yes, yesterday Metro Vancouver announced their success of their partnership with Fortis to implement a renewable natural gas system at the Lulu Island Wastewater Treatment Plant. The project is anticipated to be completed in April 2021. To hopefully address any potential concerns, RNG, renewable natural gas, or biogas, another term, is odor-free and self-contained, fully contained. So we shouldn't expect any impacts to the community. RNG, renewable natural gas, is a product of wastewater treatment, and to collect it in this capacity supports many objectives of the region, the city, and Fortis, who have all long-range plans to reduce emissions, greenhouse gas emissions from projects such as this nature. Last point I wanted to make is the capital cost is $11 million, of which $1 million will be revenue to the treatment facility, to Metro Vancouver, and all revenues will remain in the sewage area. So that would directly accrue to our capital program through Metro Vancouver sewage fees. So it's a net benefit to Richmond. It's a net benefit to all of our climate objectives that the parties are seeking.
Michael?
Great, thank you. Through the chair, just a quick question on that one. I read the memo that came out on it in an article online. And then saw actually, I guess, two pictures. One is kind of that globe, the big picture, or the big containment, I guess. It said that in the future, as Richmond grows, we'll be able to produce more of this. So does that infrastructure handle the more, or do we need to have more of those big white globe structures? Is it it could be a big cost to add capacity, or is there room to grow with what they've built?
Through the chair, I would need to verify that with Metro Vancouver staff. I would assume they would build in some capacity for expansion in this first capital program. Yeah, they do anticipate growth of the population, so I would assume the design would provide that.
Mr. Chair, just to add to that too, I mean, this is capturing biogas and scrubbing it as this project does so they can inject it back into the natural gas distribution system. It's just one of several approaches and technological solutions to accessing the energy that is in sewage. And certainly heat recovery, sewage heat recovery is another big piece that we've always explored with Metro Vancouver, not just at the treatment plant, but upstream in the collection system. And we have council endorsed sewage heat recovery plant that we're planning for the Lulu Island Park, featured right next to River Parkway, that we're hoping to get involved in detailed design on that later this year. But we've done previous feasibility studies at the plant. Certainly there's very significant volumes of available heat. We looked at options of bringing that to Steveston or bringing it back to City Center. Currently, those proved out they weren't feasible, and so this was certainly the most feasible project to move forward with at the time. But we're always continuing to explore future opportunities, not just at Lulu Island, but certainly with the new Iona plant as well. Sewage heat recovery and energy recovery is going to be a very big piece of that.
Great, thank you. Those responses, just through the chair, quick follow-up on this. I think I read that the equivalent is 600 homes, I think, could be heated by this. So is that actually what's going to happen? Is it going to go to 600 Richmond homes? And if so, where in Richmond? Does the city pick, or does it actually go to industry sites?
Through the chair, I mean, it is integrated into the grid, so it would be used by multiple parties throughout the network. That would be, that's a metric so that citizens, residents can understand the impact of the investment. So it's not specific to any one project.
I look forward to in future years going to this facility. I've gone with students in the past to do a full tour of the Lulu Island wastewater facility, and I hope this would, when I was there last, and it was 2 years ago, they were in the construction phase of this project, so it's good to, that'll be added to their network. And I just plug one more thing here, that if the staff get a chance to go on site or do an early tour in the next little while, if you could also take a look at or ask a question for us about a Sani dump and how that would be just an ideal place to put something like that, because vehicles could come, dump, and it goes right into the facility. But I know they've expressed that it's not a good site, but I don't know if we'll find a better site. So thanks.
So is a visit possible?
Sorry, I would just add the comment too that when we first looked at this project with Metro Vancouver, Council endorsed the city participating in the Fortis program with the purchase of renewable natural gas. So the way this is one of many projects that Fortis has looked at where that biogas or renewable natural gas gets injected into their system. They track that volume and then make it available to others to purchase. So if you want to specifically purchase optically that chunk of natural gas is injected, you can. And so we do that at the city. Council has dropped it at the target of 10%. And so when it's available on the market, we attempt to make that purchase. And so it's not necessarily the specific gas that's coming out of Lulu Island treatment plant, but it is accounted for in that way.
Councillor Liu?
Thank you, through the chair. Just confirming with staff, otherwise this gas would be flared because it's an off gas, right? So what they do at Anisys is they flare the off gas, and so this way we're getting it, scrubbing it and putting it back into the system. So it's saving all that energy and it's preventing just the byproduct of burning it.
Through the chair, that is correct. Some gas is recovered internal to the buildings for heating space, and that's been long-standing, in particular at Lulu Island treatment plants. But yes, otherwise this material would be flared.
Okay, and then just some information. I sit on the liquid waste committee for Metro, and all tours have been suspended during COVID because they can't deal with any of their staff getting COVID because it's a required service that the sewers have to work. But as soon as they are back online, we've talked to them about inviting people from other councils to come and join for the tour. So when the next Iona tour comes up, we'll make sure that the invitations get sent on. And as for the sandy dump, I've actually had a referral to Metro Vancouver on the sandy dump in Richmond, and they did a study and they denied it essentially. So it has gone forward. We are looking at it. I'm with you on that, but yeah, we got a big no.
Very good. Any further reports? No more? No more reports? Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn? Move.
Adjournment.
So, meeting is adjourned. Thank you. See you next time.
Do we want to go in camera and talk about that canal or no?
I received an email right before the meeting, actually, and it said that they need to do some investigation first. I think leave staff time on that.
Okay, so we can
go to the clerk. I'm not sure if you can delete the 30 pages that were a duplicate, just so we don't get another 300 pages printed for council. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Maybe it could be added to the next agenda then.
Yes, I think that would be great.
Good
Okay,
meeting.
thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Bye.
Goodbye.